Hi, I'm Casey, and I'm bad at intros. This is I Don't Know What I'm Doing. I do book things here. Wrap-ups, vlogs, occasional TBRs, tags, all that kind of shit. You know what booktube is. That's why you're here. So today we're going to do my June wrap-up. I'm going to quickly run through all the books I read in the month of June and what I gave them as far as a rating is concerned, and then we'll do superlatives at the end. The one book I did not rate this month was The Other Black Girl by Zakiya Dalila Harris. My 1 star for the month was We Had to Remove This Post by Hannah Bervowitz. My 2 star for the month was Ghost Radio by Leopoldo Gout. My 3 star was Atalanta by Jennifer Saint. My 4 stars were Other Minds by Peter Godfrey Smith, Near the Bone by Christina Henry, White Horse by Erica T. Worth, and This Is Where We Talk Things Out by Caitlin Marcoe. My 5 stars for the month were The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Kaw and In the Watchful City by S. Chuyu Liu. Moving on to superlatives. So my worst book for the month was We Had to Remove This Post. I had such a hard time with this. I was so frustrated by this. I read this very early in the month, so a lot of my frustration and anger and upset at this book has largely waned because I've gotten so far away from it at this point. This is a horror novel following Kaylee, and as she's telling the story of her and her coworkers working at, I can't remember what they call the company in here, but essentially it's a video share app similar to the current platform that we are on, and she is a reviewer. She's a content reviewer. She goes through a lot of content that has been flagged as inappropriate or violent or whatever, and she gives it the appropriate tags so that it can either stay off the platform, be removed, or is pushed through anyways. And this has such an interesting premise, and it really has such interesting themes that it really attempted to play with but didn't quite fully expand upon. I think talking about desensitization in a job like that is absolutely fascinating and could have been done so well, but ultimately this had a bunch of slurs in it, and to an extent, I'm not even going to say to an extent I understand. That would be in that job, but I don't think it was necessary to put it in this book, especially whenever one of our characters basically, as a side character, is just saying that because he is a part of one minority group that he can say all the slurs. And that was really yikes. And I know that if anyone's going to come into the comments, no one is because no one's watching this, and defend this, they'll say that, you know, it's a book about bad people doing bad things and getting worse because of a job like this. And while I understand that, it made for such a frustrating read. It was hard to connect to the characters, and ultimately this was just extremely boring. I didn't care about Kaylee, I didn't care about any of her colleagues, I didn't care about what was happening. And I know that part of that could be that I have a decently to fairly high tolerance for gore and violence and things like that. But even when that was included in here, it was just such a flash in the pan. There was just a moment of it, and this could have done more of almost anything except slurs, and it would have been vastly improved. My most disappointing book of the month was Ghost Radio. This is a horror novel following Joaquin, who is the host for a radio program called Ghost Radio, where callers come in and they tell their ghost stories or creepy stories that have happened to them, supposedly, or just sharing those kinds of things. And this I really only picked up because I'm moderately interested in the author, and because the Audible audiobook for this is narrated by Pedro Pascal, so why not? This was probably, I don't know a better way to describe it than it was the most 2008 type book I've read in a long time. This felt very similar to a lot of books that I read and that I think were published around that time period. We kind of have a main character dealing with some machismo and this sort of not counter character, but this kind of counterbalance character that's even more machismo and trying to, you know, butch up the main character, I guess. It was very frustrating to read. Also, our main female character, whose name I've forgotten, but I believe is Elena, is just there. She's there for the most part. There's not much more to her character other than, you know, whenever we get, you know, a little bit of her backstory and just enough to know that she's super into sex. It read very similar to a lot of books I would have read around that time, like a lot of Stephen King, some James Rollins, just stuff like that, that just kind of teetered on just this like sexist level, but also like still trying to have our main female character do something. I don't know. It was kind of a weird ride. And by the end, I didn't care about what was happening. I didn't really understand what was happening, and I didn't care enough about what was happening to try to understand what was happening if it wasn't gonna just hand it to me. My most meh book of the month was The Other Black Girl. This one I have to do explanations for. This was very meh to me because I didn't know what this book was. I picked this book up because the Buzzword Reading Challenge for the month of June was Other, and I had no books on my want to read shelf or physically in my home that had that word in it. So I did a quick search for books with the word other in it. I recognized the cover for this one, and the cover to me screamed literary fiction. This is not literary fiction, this is a thriller. The Other Black Girl is a thriller following a young woman named Nella, who is a black woman in the publishing industry working at a very prestigious publisher. And she's been there for a few years now, and she has not really moved upwards as far as her career is concerned, even though she has really tried. And another black woman named Hazel comes to work at the company and seemingly steals everyone's attention, a lot of Nella's ideas, a lot of things happen that sort of pit them against each other, and then things unfold from there. I have very mixed feelings about thrillers, and by mixed I mean I keep trying to give them a chance this year, but they just keep not working for me. And that's unfortunately what happened here. I didn't give this a rating because I think all of my feelings around it, while I feel like they're valid, they're mine. This is a book that is not for me, and I'm not the target audience, and I'm not the person who should be making a point to go out and just tank or embellish the rating for this on the various sites. So I reserved any ratings I might have had for this one, just purely because I recognize that it was not for me to come in and say, give a numerical value to the worthiness of this book. My most surprising book of the month was Near the Bone by Christina Henry. I have a sort of, I don't want to say mixed past with Christina Henry. I've read 2 books of hers previously, and I didn't really care for either of them, and I've actually since unhauled them, and they have been donated. But this I really enjoyed. I thought this was quite good. It was fun, it was engaging, it was fast-paced. Near the Bone is a horror novel. We are following a young woman named Maddie who is living in the woods with her husband, and they are very isolated. He is the only one of them who goes into town occasionally to restock their supplies, and she knows that I don't know a gentler way to put it. She's in an extremely abusive and isolated relationship, and it's really horrific. And that's very clear from very early in the book. I'm not spoiling anything. But Maddie one day finds some people on their mountain, and this frightens her more than her husband does because she knows how angry he will get that there are people there. This is a little bit of creature horror, it's a lot of people horror, and this was just really fun. I had a really good time reading this. I found it very hard to put down. I kept wanting to come back, wanting to see what Maddie was doing, what was happening with her, and I really enjoyed it. And I was very surprised because of the 2 Christina Henrys that I have not vibed with before, and so I was very, very pleasantly surprised with this one. On to my favorite for the month of June, and that is In the Watchful City. This is a fantasy novel. This is following Anima, and Anima uses A-air pronouns, and A is connected to the Gleaming, which is sort of the central network in the city of Aura. Anima can project air consciousness into other beings and watches the people and sort of looks out for them without them really knowing that A exists. And I don't want to say too much more about this because I went in utterly blind and I found it so captivating and moving and beautiful. This interweaves stories from not only Aura but from other places in the world. It's all very interconnected and it was just absolutely beautiful. This was extremely easy to read in one sitting. It's a very short novella, and I I could just gush about this for a long time, but it would absolutely spoil everything in this book. So I can't say enough about it, except if you enjoy fantasy and you enjoy sort of strange fantasy that doesn't give you a lot initially, but really expands upon itself as it goes on, this would very much be for you. Okay, that's it. That's my June wrap up. Do algorithm things if you want, like, comment, subscribe, and if not, I will see you next Friday. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Bye.